The Super Puff is actually part of a collection with Aritzia. They have 3 different sizes, I believe, and the one that I have is the long version. So it's a relaxed fit, it's maxi length, meaning it hits below the knee but above the ankle. It's quilted with 100% responsibly sourced goose down. The exterior fabric is nylon and it is water repellent. The coat was made in China, but they do highlight that the fabric is from Japan. It has a removable hood with a zipper and Velcro adhesive. There's 3 different pockets, including an interior zipper breast pocket, and these pockets are also lined with what feels like a fleece material that's very warm. And for care, it is machine washable. Hey everyone, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Maria, and today I'll be doing a review on the Super Puff long coat from Aritzia. So I bought this coat almost a month ago and I've worn it 16 out of the past 20 days that I got it. So the coat cost me $315.88 with New York City tax, which brings its current cost per wear to $19.74. I bought this coat in mid-November, and here's a quick overview of the weather conditions I've worn it in. It's been an average of 35 degrees Fahrenheit or 1 degree Celsius in New York the past 20 days that I've had it. And I've worn it in the snow and the rain. I've worn it when it was as warm as 55 degrees Fahrenheit or 12 degrees Celsius and as cold as 16 degrees Fahrenheit or -8 degrees Celsius. I've also worn it walking for long periods of time outside, as well as packed subway cars and in taxis. So here's a quick peek of how this coat fits in with my existing wardrobe. This coat is the 18th piece of clothing I've purchased this year, and I chose to get it in the black color because black is the prominent base color in my capsule wardrobe. And if you weren't aware, I do track my capsule wardrobe pretty meticulously through data. So if you're interested in that, I will link a video on how I do that in the upper right corner. Alright, so now that you have the context on how much I've worn the coat and in what conditions, let's go ahead and talk about the pros and cons now. So the biggest pro of this coat for me is definitely the length. I'm a person who is almost always cold, and so getting a long winter coat was the #1 priority on my list when getting a new winter coat. The coat literally feels like you're zipped in a nice cozy sleeping bag, and it makes cold, wet, windy weather bearable, for me at least. The second pro of this coat is that it's goose down material. So this is the first coat that I've ever had that was goose down, and it really is an efficient way to keep warm. The coat features an extended fitted interior sleeve that I wasn't aware of until I tried it on in the store. I've never had a coat that's had something like this, but I've always hated how there was a gap between where my gloves ended and where my coat sleeves started. I felt like this part of my skin always was exposed to the cold air and was really uncomfortable. So when I tried it on in the store, I was really excited about that feature. Next, the style is just really cool. So even though this is a heavy-duty coat, it's actually really cool looking. The relaxed fit is also pretty slim, so you don't feel like you're super bulky. The material also has a nice matte finish, which makes it look a little bit more modern. The old styles of puffer I feel like were really shiny, and that just seems a bit dated now. There's also snaps on the bottom for additional mobility. This really came in handy about a week or 2 ago when I went ice skating and needed to be able to move my legs a little bit more than I typically do when I walk. But it did come in handy for that light exercise. Finally, the interior of the pockets, as I mentioned before, is a really soft fleece material. I haven't worn gloves yet this year, so I typically keep my hands in these pockets, and this has kept them plenty warm. Alright, so moving on to the cons. Because this coat is goose down, the feathers do unfortunately still come out a bit. The coat I had before was also a puffer, and I always hated the tiny bits of feathers that stick to your shirt when you take it off. And since I primarily wear black, it's pretty obvious, and that's really annoying. It's not a ton, and it's definitely less than my previous puffer, but it is definitely an issue. The other con is that my makeup does show up on the top corner of the coat, And I don't know if that's really a design problem, probably a problem in how I apply my makeup, but it is something that I have to deal with this coat, so I usually have to wipe it down with some water and a little bit of soap after each use, which isn't a big deal, but it's not something that I've had to deal with my other coats. Okay, so who would I recommend this coat for? Definitely people who are always cold. I'm most comfortable when it's like 75 degrees plus, so even when it gets a little bit chilly, I'm always the one who's complaining about how cold it is. So as you saw in the visualization earlier, I've worn this coat in 50-degree weather. This coat is marketed to be for super cold weather, but I noticed that even wearing it on days when people were wearing light jackets, if I wore it open, I was very comfortable, where typically I would just be shivering in a jacket even in 55-degree weather. So if you're someone who's always cold, even when it's like 50 degrees Fahrenheit with a little bit of wind, this might be a good option for you. I'd also recommend this for anyone who has to spend more than like 3 or 4 minutes outside walking on a daily basis. So my walk to the subway is about 4 minutes, and same thing, and my walk to work is a little more than 10 minutes. And that's enough time where it's really uncomfortable to be chilly, especially if there's like a lot of wind or rain, and it just is worth it to be comfortable. I'd also recommend this for anyone whose car takes a really long time to warm up. So I'm originally from the Midwest, and when we go home for Christmas, the cars are always like ice boxes when we get into them to go somewhere else, and it can be really uncomfortable to be in like a shorter coat or one that's not thick enough, so definitely would recommend it for those types of people as well. And then finally, I'd recommend it for people who do prioritize comfort over necessarily like femininity, I guess. There's a lot of coats that have cinched waists or like fur or more feminine decorative aspects to them. As you can see, this coat is it's a relaxed fit, it's pretty shapeless. You don't really feel super feminine in it, but the pro is that it's not very bulky either. So as long as you're okay with that, then I think this style would be good for you. Like I mentioned earlier, Aritzia does have 2 other cuts of this. One's like a mid-length and the other's almost a crop. I really love how the crop one looks. I think it is super flattering, and it kind of like shows off your lower half a little bit more, so it's more feminine. But the reason why I didn't get it was because I knew I am always cold and I just really wanted to get something where I would be the most comfortable for you know, a majority of the year in New York. It's cold a lot. So here's a few things that you should definitely consider before buying this coat. If you're like me and you run a little bit hot, meaning you get overheated fairly easily, you do want to make sure that you make accommodations. So if you take public transportation, you know the challenge of changing environments in terms of temperature really quickly. It could be frigid cold outside, and then as soon as you get on a crowded subway, it can be sweltering. So I always make sure to take off my hat, my scarf, and then unzip my coat when I get on a crowded subway. Because I have fainted on the subway before because of overheating and not eating breakfast, and that's a really unpleasant experience. So definitely take this coat seriously because it is very warm. So if you're moving from very cold to very hot, remove your hat, gloves, unzip it. I've even taken this coat off in the subway because my subway commute is really long and I do get overheated. The other consideration is, like I mentioned before, if you do wear a lot of dark clothing, just be mindful that you probably will get a few tiny feathers on you when you take it off. So I don't know, I always just kind of like check myself when I get off to make sure there's not like any weird feathers like hanging off of my clothes. Alright, so that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this review helpful. Be sure to subscribe to my channel for more videos and follow me on Instagram at goldzipperr to see how I style my capsule wardrobe, talking about new projects I'm doing, and interacting with people who are very passionate about small, sustainable capsule wardrobes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.